This is Karl Moore for Forbes. Today I'm delighted to speak to four-star General Martin Dempsey, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff for the U.S. military. Between the frontline troop and yourself, there's many levels of filters. How do you sniff out reality with all those filters getting between you and truth?
Man, boy, that's really hard. I mean, a retired four-star general who will go unnamed. When I pinned on my fourth star in December of '08, and I had a four-star coming through the receiving line to congratulate me, and he leaned over and he whispered and he said, "You realize that from this point forward, no one will ever tell you the truth again." And I took that. It was he said it tongue in cheek, but I took to heart the caution, and the caution is that when people generally want to tell you what's going well in their lives, and by the way, growing up, I mean, you don't want to have, you might see the chief staff of the Army once in your life, or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs once in your life, maybe if you're lucky. And when you see that person, you don't want to unload your rucksack of problems. You generally speaking want to tell them, what seems to be going well, and you might throw in the odd, "I could use some help in this regard," but it's really hard. I mean, really hard to figure out what's going on at the lowest tactical edge. Where that young soldier's at there, by himself on the border of the, between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And I think it's the reason I travel. It's the reason I engage. It's the reason I'll give you one, and I have many, but I'll give you one vignette about my Facebook page that was really important to me and made me feel very good about it. We have a policy with, we've had some challenges with traumatic brain injury. And so, identifying it, understanding it, treating it, and preventing it. And so, every once in a while on Facebook, just to get some feedback, I'll post a question. I'll say, "Hey, look, we're trying to figure out what we can do at this level to help you at that level deal with traumatic brain injury. Anybody got any ideas?" And I tell you, I'll get 100,000 hits on a question like that. I published my reading list last week and got 250,000 hits in the first 6 hours. People downloading my professional reading list. So it's really powerful. And again, I'm not trying to undermine the chain of command between me and them, and I never do. And I never, every once in a while somebody will be critical of a leader somewhere along the line, and there's other mechanisms for dealing with that. But in this vignette, this soldier said to me, "Sir, I had a problem. I was within 100 feet of a blast, and my chain of command notified my spouse, and she got all upset and worried about me, and I had decided I wouldn't tell her because I was far enough away that I wasn't affected by it. And my brigade surgeon told my spouse, and now, I got this huge problem. My wife thinks I'm, being disingenuous with her and so forth." And, he said, I think it was a violation of the policy. So frankly, I had no idea what the policy was. That kind of, I know a lot about policy, but I don't know what that particular policy was at that level. And it turns out that we had in fact put a policy in place to try to help us help them that said, if you were within 50 meters or 50 feet, I guess, of a blast, that you had to be examined by a doctor, kind of the same way you'd examine a potential concussion on a football field, and that if you were within 50 feet, we would want to inform your next of kin, just as we would if you were wounded, but we needed your permission to do it. That was the policy. Well, some well-meaning, again, most of the time the problems we have are not ill-meaning people doing things, it's well-meaning people doing things. Some well-meaning brigade surgeon major said, well, if 50 feet is good, to test these kids, maybe 100 feet's even better. And I think we should tell the families one way or the other because we'll be helping them. And so this one brigade, which is 3,500 people out of right now 100,000 deployed, this one brigade, if you were within 100 feet, you were going to get pulled from the line, you were going to get examined, and they were going to tell your next of kin. And we had to roll back in. I had to go back through the chain of command and say, look, you can't kind of independently raise the standard here. We've got the standard in place for a reason. So there's a case where at the lowest edge I was able to see something that otherwise I never would have been able to see, and kind of flip it almost immediately. But again, you have to be careful with that kind of power, because you could become I could become the big squad leader in Washington, and I don't want to do that.
It's interesting because in some companies, social media is something they frown on. Sounds like the military has embraced it.
I tell you, I have personally. I wouldn't suggest to you the military has in writ large. I have, and when someone told me that Facebook was the 4th largest country in the world, I decided I ought to be part of that. And I have found it to be empowering, actually. And and I haven't had people abuse it. So I'm not at all. I understand some of the privacy issues, some of the security issues. I think we have to watch as we go forward. Look, I'll tell you. I think we'll see 10 years from now some young kid trying to get a job with a particular level of security clearance, either inside the military or not, who maybe 10 years earlier had posted something on Facebook, that involved in some kind of jackassery, and he won't be able to get that job. That's going to happen, and these kids today don't think about it in those terms. So there are some issues with exposing yourself in the social media. But I think it can be enormously empowering and collaborative used correctly.
Do you tweet and do YouTube at all?
I don't do YouTube except when I do tweet, and I have been caught on YouTube singing New York, New York.
I've seen it.
Yeah, but I don't use YouTube myself personally, but I do both Facebook and Twitter.